Hello, Mr. Natural here from Mr. Natural's Music School in San Francisco, California, Haight-Ashbury area. Welcome. Well, I put together a playlist for you here in which I'm going to teach you to read music by interval or by number. There'll be little or no reference to the ABCs. Most everything will be done in one key. We'll learn up to 21 different songs from very simple to extremely complex, and it will be applied mostly to the keyboard. Later I will show you how to apply the same thing to 6 different instruments. The main song that we'll be using throughout this piece is Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, which I got from Hal Leonard's The Real Vocal Book, Volume Number 1, 2nd edition, which you can find in any store. The Hal Leonard Real Books are a series of books that have standard tunes or jazz standard covers in them, and I think there's up to 4 volumes, 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the moment, in which you can find about 700 songs. I go through the books and find out what each song in what key is, and then I write in on the in the contents portion of the book. I write next to the name of the song as well as the page number the actual key that it's in, so I can look up in the table of contents quickly and find out what key something is in, and then I can read a lot of things in one particular key. In this playlist we'll be starting out learning by number. So the first thing I do is I train your eye to be able to see these interval distances. We start with odd numbers, which are the easiest to learn to read. We then do a series of drills with flashcards, and then it will move on to even numbers. Even numbers are a little bit more difficult to see, but with a little bit of practice you can pick up on it. So there'll be a whole series of drills until finally you can see odd or even numbers. Then there'll be a series of combinations where I'll be doing odd and even numbers mixed together until eventually at the end of this series of drills you will be able to see with your eyeball quite well these interval distances and be able to spell anything with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. At the end of that piece, we will then go into looking at Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, which is in the key of E flat. Now I've chosen the key of E flat. Most people start out in the key of C, which has no accidentals, sharps or flats in it. They then introduce you to the key of G with 1 sharp, the key of F with 1 flat, 2 sharps, the key of D, 2 flats, the key of B flat, etc. 3 sharps, 3 flats, 4 sharps, 4 flats, 5 flats, and that's about as far as most people can go. Anything more than 4 sharps or more than 5 flats, most people find it very difficult to read music, and it takes approximately 4 or 5 years to get used to that system to be able to read in all those 6 or 7 different keys quite easily. But with this method I'm going to start you on E flat, because in the treble clef the bottom line of the staff becomes the number 1. And also the key of E, which has 4 sharps in it, also starts on that same line. And for you guitar players out there, people who are learning stringed instruments and need to learn to read in the key of E, you will find all of this stuff quite applicable. Although I'm using E flat, which has 3 flats in it, 4 sharps, the key of E, the number 1 would also start on that bottom line, and everything that we learn would read exactly the same. Since we're reading by numbers, every line and every space is simply a whole integer number. And so if you can get do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and play that major scale on any musical instrument, you can start playing in any key with any scale every one of these pieces. The next thing I'm going to do in the playlist is introduce how to play that song, the melody of that song on the keyboard, and then I'll show you a device I call the intervalometer, which the kids in my school call the slider, which moves around behind the black keys and shows you where the numbers would be and allows you to find the scale in any key. And we'll start out by playing it in the key of E flat, but then I'm going to move the melody to about 6 different other keys to show you that the same number pattern can be played in multiple different keys. I will then show you an enumeration of the chords. There are basically just 4 chords in this piece of music. It starts with a 2 minor 7th chord, it goes to a 5-7 dominant chord, it moves to a 1 major 7th chord, and then it goes to a diminished chord, and then the whole thing starts over again. And in the middle of the piece it just rocks between the 1 and the 5, the 1 and the 5 chord. So it's a very simple chord progression as well. I'll show you how to spell that chord progression in the key of E flat by number, and then how to move that same chord progression into multiple keys. And again, we'll probably go through 6 or 7 different keys that we will learn to play that exact same chord progression in. So you can play it in any key that you want to on the keyboard. After that, we're going to go right into sight reading music. And as I start bringing up these pieces of music slowly, I will be singing the numbers out loud. Now I am singing, my voice, I'm singing approximately in the key of C. I don't have accurate enough pitch that when I'm singing through it to be perfect all the way through, but if you play C on the piano or C on a guitar, or you play on your B flat instrument the D scale, which is the sounding C, or on an E flat instrument you play the A scale, which would sound the key of C, or on an F instrument you play your G scale, which would give you the sound for the key of C. You'll be able to play along with me as I'm reading the numbers. Just take your scale, whatever it is. For instance, on clarinet, if you're playing the D scale, D would be 1, E would be 2, F sharp would be 3, etc., etc. So just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 again. Most of these songs are only 1 octave wide. Some go below the number 1 down to a low 5. So you can't have a flute, for instance, in which all the holes are closed and you can't go any lower. You'd have to start in the middle of the flute and then play up an octave from there. So if any instrument that gives you just a single octave, it's going to be difficult playing these pieces. So you'll have to start high with a high 5, work your way up, and then drop down at the appropriate point to play these. But you should be able to, in the key of C on any instrument, be able to sing or play along with me as I'm singing the intervals out loud. Now we'll begin with 4 or 5 pieces that are right from that Hal Leonard real vocal book, which are standard jazz pieces written by some pretty incredible musicians in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And what we'll do is we'll use mostly diatonic melodies. That means there'll be no sharps or flats or accidentals in those pieces at first. As we find in Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, there are no sharps and flats in that piece. Later I will then introduce another 4 or 5 pieces that have a single sharp in them. And then later I will introduce some songs that have a single flat in them. And then later I will introduce songs that have 3 or 4 sharps in them, and then pieces with up to 3 or 4 flats in them. Then later I will introduce pieces that have mixed sharps and flats, or flats and sharps mixed with them, and neutral signs. The neutral sign, when you play by number, can change. It can look like a neutral where it's resetting something back to 0 or to its default, or if we are playing in a key that has flats in the key signature, the neutral sign will always act like a sharp and try to eliminate the flatness by pushing it up a half a step. So in that case, the neutral looks like a sharp. If we see a key like E, which has 4 sharps in it, then the neutral sign acts like a flat and goes in the opposite direction, eliminating or getting rid of the sharpness, making that particular note flat. So in those cases, the sharp will change, and it will always be the opposite of whatever kinds of accidentals are used in the key signature. We will then introduce those. I'll introduce a concept called Nags. There are times when accidentals, sharps, flats, and neutrals, are used spontaneously or helter-skelterly by people who are writing music. Somewhere back in the music, they added a sharp to a piece, and then later on, 3 or 4 measures later, they try to remind you that it's no longer that way by putting a neutral in front of it or resetting it to its original sharp or flat. and those are nags. They are not necessary, because the rule is when we cross over the boundary of the measure, all bets are off and things go back to normal. I'll explain all that as time goes on. So this playlist here will take you through approximately 21 songs that start out diatonic, add one accidental, then the opposite type of accidental, then combinations of accidentals, until finally the last three pieces you will find will also have things like double sharps as well, and extra flats, and will be a mixed bag and will almost be chromatic. In the last piece I think there are 5 sharps and 2 flats that are being used. Some of these sharps and flats are on the piano the same thing. For instance, a 6 sharp will also be a 7 flat, and the reason for that is we have to do what looks right to the eye. If I have a note on the 6 line and then I want to make it flat, and I just put a flat in front of that, and then I want to make it neutral and bring it back, the eyeball sees no motion in that. So quite often people will use a 6 sharp going up to a 7 and then come back to a 6 sharp, or in other cases they'll have a 1 coming down to a 7 flat going up to a 1 again, so the eyeball sees some motion or movement between a line and a space. So if a piece has a 6 sharp and a 7 flat, or it has a 4 sharp and a 5 flat in it, the reason it's doing it is so the melody will look good to the eye and be easier to read, even though those on the piano will be the same key. However, on instruments like the violin, the viola, the cello, instruments that are non-fretted, those interval distances will be slightly different, because a sharp is slightly higher than a flat on a non-fretted instrument, since they do not have to play in equal tempering. So don't let that confuse you. At the end of all of this, I will give a demonstration where I will take Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, and I will show you how to play it on the trumpet, on the harmonica, on the banjo, on the guitar, on the flute, bamboo flute, on the regular flute or clarinet, or any woodwind, like I think I use a saxophone. So I will show you on 6 different musical instruments how to apply this number concept to be able to read in any key on any instrument. With this playlist, if you go from the very beginning to the very end, I guarantee you will learn how to read by number, not have to use ABC, and you will be able to transpose or translate any melody into another key instantaneously. You'll be able to read music that's written in one key and play it on an instrument in a different key, and pick up another instrument and play it in another key, and another instrument in another key, etc., etc. This is a good method for learning transposition and playing in any key, all keys equally, and a really good method for learning to play multiple instruments. So I hope you enjoy this course from beginning to end. Enjoy this playlist. Study, 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 study hard, and enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. And I hope you like this new revolutionary, simple method of learning music. And this can be applied to any other key. Just get yourself 10 songs in the key of G and find out where 1 is, and just start practicing until your eyeball can see it. Until then, later on we'll be going into other things. I'll be doing other keys. I'll be showing you how to apply this music by number on multiple instruments, and we'll be doing separate playlists. I'll be teaching you how to read, write, and dictate and hear rhythms, and we'll be teaching you some ideas of music composition with those rhythms, and song forms, and rhyme schemes, and various other things to help you learn to write music as well as read music in any key on any instrument. So welcome to Mr. Natural's Music School, and I hope you enjoy this first complete set of lessons for teaching someone to read by interval and learn these 21 songs and enjoy them. Until later, Thank you.